is a time when magic is more powerful than science, and only those who control the magic control destiny. They are the Visionaries.
The magical light. Visionaries, visionaries, knights of the magical light.
By the power of the magical light! Remember shouting that in your backyard, pretending your arm just transformed into a lion? If Visionaries, Knights of the Magical Light ever lived in your Saturday morning rotation, buckle up, because the way this series ended will either break your heart all over again, or finally explain why you felt cheated as a kid. We're going back to the planet Prismos, where swords replaced circuit boards, animals replaced engines, and two factions of warriors fought for the soul of an entire world. The question nobody answered back then? Who actually won? And the truth behind that answer is wilder than you remember.
Survive the many traps set before you and reach my shrine.
Part 1. The World and Heroes. The world that was built and then fell apart. Picture a civilization more advanced than ours. Gleaming technology, sprawling cities, machines that could do anything. Then imagine it all going dark in a single moment. That was Prysmos. When the planet's 3 suns aligned in a rare celestial event called the Age of Magic, every piece of technology on the world stopped working permanently. Computers, vehicles, weapons, gone. Humanity was thrown back to a medieval existence overnight, like someone yanked the power cord on an entire civilization. This wasn't your standard fantasy world that had always had swords and sorcery. Prismos earned its magic the hard way, through catastrophic loss. That collision of futuristic wreckage and ancient mysticism gave the show an atmosphere unlike anything else airing in 1987. It felt like He-Man had been thrown into a post-apocalyptic blender with Arthurian legend, then seasoned with something genuinely strange and mythological. The central conflict sprang from this collapse. A powerful ancient wizard named Merklin offered magical abilities to any warrior brave, or desperate, enough to complete a deadly obstacle course through his shrine. Those who survived received totemic animal powers and magical staffs capable of casting devastating spells. 2 groups emerged from that trial: the noble spectral knights and the ruthless darkling lords. And from that moment forward, Prismos became their battlefield. The show first aired in 1987, part of that golden wave of animated series that ruled afternoon television the way Michael Jordan ruled basketball courts, completely and without apology.
Where there's hope, there was always a way.
The heroes we wanted to be. Leoric led the Spectral Knights, and if you were a kid watching this show, Leoric was the guy you wanted to grow up to be. He carried himself with genuine nobility, not the stuffy, distant kind, but the kind earned through sacrifice and conviction. His totem animal was the lion, which suited him perfectly. Commanding, fierce, but also protective of those around him. Leoric wasn't just a warrior chasing victory. He was a leader, carrying the weight of an entire civilization's hope on his shoulders. The Spectral Knights weren't a one-man army, though. Feral was the team's tracker and scout, his wolf totem making him quick and instinctively attuned to danger. Cryotech brought raw physical power to the group, his bear totem transforming him into an unstoppable force when combat demanded it. Witterquick was the team's speed specialist, his cheetah totem allowing him to move faster than any opponent could anticipate. Each knight brought something irreplaceable to the mission. What made the Spectral Knights memorable wasn't just their powers, it was the sense that they genuinely believed in something worth fighting for. They weren't mercenaries, they weren't glory hunters. They were people who had seen their world collapse and chosen to protect what remained rather than exploit it. That moral clarity hit different when you were 10 years old, sitting cross-legged in front of the TV with a bowl of cereal going soggy.
I wasn't sneaking. I was trying to avoid seeing your wretched face.
The woman who stood her ground. Galadria was the Spectral Knight's female warrior, and she did not take a single day off. Her totem was the dolphin, which might sound gentle compared to lions and bears, until you remember that dolphins are among the most intelligent, adaptable creatures on Earth. That was Galadria exactly. She wasn't the team's decoration, she was its conscience and one of its most capable fighters. In a show populated by armored warriors swinging magical staves and transforming into animals, Galadria held her own without apology. She was compassionate where others were aggressive, strategic where others charged forward blindly. If Leoric was the heart of the Spectral Knights, Galadria was often their moral compass, the one asking whether winning a battle was worth losing themselves in the process. There's a reason so many kids in 1987 found themselves unexpectedly invested every time Galadriel appeared on screen. Strength, intelligence, and quiet confidence. She had all three. She was the kind of character who made you want to be better, whether you were 8 years old and didn't fully understand why yet.
I give you the gorilla totem.
The villains we loved to hate. And then there was Darkstorm. If Leoric represented everything Prismos could become, Darkstorm represented everything it might destroy itself being. He led the Darkling Lords with cold, calculating ambition, not the raving, scenery-chewing villainy of lesser antagonists, but the measured cruelty of someone who genuinely believed power was the only thing that mattered. His totem was the mollusk, and his magical staff cast a spell called the Decay, a power that rotted and destroyed anything it touched. Poetic, really. The Darkling Lords weren't just obstacles for the heroes to overcome. They were a mirror, a dark reflection of what the Spectral Knights might become if they abandoned their principles. Riken, Mordred, Kravex. Each Darkling Lord brought something menacing to the group's arsenal, from treachery to pure, unrestrained violence. They operated with a different philosophy than the heroes. The strong take what they want, and the weak deserve whatever happens to them. What made Darkstorm genuinely compelling was that he wasn't wrong about one thing. Power had completely reshaped Prismos. He just drew the wrong conclusion about what to do with that fact. And watching Leoric and Darkstorm clash across 13 episodes felt like watching two completely different answers to the same desperate question. Here's the thing that kept kids up at night. Darkstorm never actually lost. Not really. And by the time the show ended, that fact had consequences nobody saw coming.
Tell Darkstorm that we are less than impressed by his show of force.
Part 2. The Journey and Ending. The episodes that burned into memory. The series ran 13 episodes, and within that tight window, it packed in mythology, moral complexity, and genuine stakes that most shows twice its length never achieved. The premiere established the world's collapse and Merklin's challenge with a confidence that told you immediately this wasn't a show content to coast on toy commercials alone. The obstacle course through Merklin's shrine was brutal. Warriors died, alliances fractured, and the survivors emerged changed in ways they were still processing episodes later. One of the show's smartest moves was making Merklin himself deeply ambiguous. He wasn't exactly a hero. He wasn't exactly a villain. He was something older and more complicated. A wizard who had given both the Spectral Knights and the Darkling Lords their powers, seemingly content to watch the conflict play out as part of some larger, unknowable design. Every episode where Merklin appeared, you found yourself wondering whose side he was actually on. The magical staff spells became a signature element that kids quoted endlessly. Incantations that felt genuinely mythological, like they'd been pulled from some ancient text rather than a writer's room in Hollywood. When Leoric raised his staff and called upon the power of the lion, or when Darkstorm's decay spell crackled across the screen, it felt earned in a way that pure technological powers rarely did.
What vision 200? Oh, please, I'm trying to count.
The ongoing war for Prismos. As the series progressed, the battle between the Spectral Knights and the Darkling Lords escalated around a specific, critical objective: Iron Mountain. The Darkling Lords had seized control of this fortified stronghold, giving them a strategic advantage that threatened to tip the entire conflict in their favor. Liberating Iron Mountain became the Spectral Knights' primary mission, not just a battle objective, but a symbol of whether the forces of decency could actually push back against organized brutality on a broken world. The show was smart enough to not make victory easy or inevitable. The Spectral Knights suffered real setbacks, plans failed, alliances proved fragile. The Darkling Lords were genuinely dangerous opponents who didn't make convenient mistakes. For a children's animated series airing in 1987, Visionaries was remarkably willing to let its heroes struggle, to let the weight of their mission show on their faces, in their decisions, in the cost of every choice they made. Which brings us to the episode that ended everything. And when I tell you how it ended, you're going to feel 13 years old all over again. And not necessarily in a good way.
Return it! Darkstorm stole it from me, and I'm stealing it back!
The final episode, and the betrayal of the cliffhanger. The last episode American audiences ever saw was called Honor Among Thieves. It centered on Leoric attempting to recruit a mercenary named Fletch to help liberate Iron Mountain from the Darkling Lords. Fletch had captured a group of dwarves, and the mission's success depended entirely on whether he could be persuaded to fight on the right side. The episode ended with Fletch holding both the Spectral Knights and the Darkling Lords at gunpoint, or the magical equivalent, with his dwarf prisoners as leverage, essentially announcing he'd side with whoever paid him more. It was a sharp piece of storytelling, actually. A world-weary mercenary forcing two opposing armies of magical knights to compete for his loyalty like bidders at an auction. It had wit and moral ambiguity woven right into its bones. And then the credits rolled, and the show never came back. Iron Mountain was never liberated. Darkstorm was never defeated. Merklin's true purpose remained a mystery. The fate of Prismos, a planet that had already survived one civilization-ending catastrophe, was left permanently open. Leoric was still fighting, Galadriel was still standing her ground, Darkstorm was still plotting, and Fletch was still deciding who to trust.
Within, without, within, may this spell imprison him.
Why it ended when it did. The series concluded after its initial 13-episode run in 1987, a victim of the brutal mathematics of television and toy line economics that swallowed several beloved properties whole during that era. It was the He-Man of its moment in the wrong way. Here one season, gone the next, before the story had a chance to breathe.
Help me! Help me!
What could have been, the season that never happened. Here's what makes the cancellation genuinely painful. A second season of 13 episodes had already been planned. Those episodes would have continued the story, potentially freeing Merklin, introducing new magical elements and new factions to the conflict, and presumably building towards some kind of resolution for the war between the Spectral Knights and the Darkling Lords. What would a freed Merklin have meant for the balance of power on Prismos? Would his allegiance have shifted the conflict decisively toward one side? Would the introduction of new magical factions have complicated the clean moral lines between the Knights and the Lords? These questions had answers that were scripted, planned, and ready, and then they simply ceased to exist when production stopped. It's like finding out the final chapter of your favorite book was written, but the publisher shredded every copy. The story existed. Someone knew how it ended. That knowledge just never made it to the audience waiting for it. That second season, the one where we might have finally seen Darkstorm fall and Leoric's mission completed, vanished like Prysmos' technology at the moment of the Age of Magic. Gone before anyone understood what they were losing.
For if you desire me to carry out this deed, you must swear loyalty to me.
A legacy that refused to die. Visionaries never got its proper ending on screen, but it never entirely disappeared either. The comic book series, published by Marvel's Star Comics imprint, ran alongside the cartoon and extended some of the mythology, giving dedicated fans additional story material to hold on to after the show went dark. It wasn't the same as a second season, but it was something. Proof that the world of Prismos had more story in it than 13 episodes could contain. The property has lived on in the memories of exactly the audience it was built for. Kids who grew up in the late 1980s and never quite got over the abrupt silence where a second season should have been. Online communities have kept the discussion alive for decades, debating what that second season might have looked like, which characters deserved more development, what Merklin's endgame actually was. There have been revival discussions over the years, the kind of whispered Hollywood rumors that surface periodically around beloved abandoned properties. Whether Prismos ever returns in any meaningful form remains genuinely unknown. The Spectral Knights and Darkling Lords are still technically locked in their conflict, frozen in the amber of 1987's unfinished story, waiting for someone to pick up where Fletch's standoff left the entire war suspended. Visionaries, Knights of the Magical Light, gave us 13 episodes of something genuinely different. A world built on the ruins of technology, warriors transformed by ancient magic, and a moral conflict that didn't have easy answers. Leoric carried the weight of a civilization's hope. Galadriel proved that wisdom and strength belonged in the same hands. Darkstorm reminded us that power without conscience was just destruction wearing a crown. And Prismos, that beautiful broken planet, deserved an ending it never received. This was a show that asked real questions about what people do when the world they built collapses. And for a generation of kids who watched it on Saturday mornings, it mattered. It still does. So here's the question I'll leave you with. Which Spectral Knight were you on the playground? Were you Leoric, leading the charge? Witterquick, racing ahead of everyone? Or were you secretly a Darkstorm, just because his powers were cooler? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit like if Prismos still lives somewhere in the back of your memory. Subscribe if you want more of these deep dives into the shows that defined us. By the power of the magical light, the story isn't over, not for us.